All right, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, whatever it is. We are called to order from our recessed meeting from last Tuesday, and we are back in session now, and we will restart our meeting with another invocation and pledge of allegiance. So we'll start with the invocation. Father God, we thank you this afternoon for the ability to come together as a governing body and staff, as a team, working for the betterment of our town and our citizens and businesses here in Spencer. We ask that you be with us as our upcoming budget is presented to us. Give us wisdom and discernment and as we hear this budget, and we look forward to the great things that you're going to allow us to do in our town in the upcoming fiscal year. Amen. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we are here today to receive a presentation from Mr. Franzese on the town manager's recommended fiscal year 2026-2027 budget. Mr. Franzese, the floor is yours.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Mayor and members of the board. Appreciate y'all coming back together this afternoon to continue our meeting from last week and to receive this today. What we're going to do today is one step in our process of getting to an adopted budget for next year. Of course, this is all laid out in state law, but I just want you to keep in mind that today's kind of the step about receiving the presentation and starting your process of taking it in and marinating on it. We're not asking you to make decisions today. We're here to present and kick off that process of taking the work that we've been doing and putting it out there for you in the public to consider and working towards the adoption that will come in June. So you'll have some time to consider this, and I'll talk about the next steps at the close of the presentation. We're going to start out with just a bit of an overview of the budget, and then I'm going to invite our finance officer, Heather Tan, to discuss the revenue side of the budget, and I'll, after that, highlight the main recommendations on the expenditure side. So in total, the proposed budget for fiscal year 2027 totals about $5.6 million, and 5.3 of that is in the general fund. We have about $228,000 proposed for the Powell Bill Fund and $67,366 in the Capital Reserve and Replacement Fund. The recommended property tax rate will not change, or the recommendation is to not change the rate, keep it at the current 63.05 cents per $100 of valuation. In total, the proposed budget is about an 8% increase from the current year adopted overall budget, and it's about a 6% increase for the general fund. The increase is supported by modest growth in assessed property values and local sales taxes, our two key municipal revenue sources. But this growth was tempered by additional expenses, higher costs that we're anticipating with our staff compensation, with health insurance, and with retirement contributions. The budget is very much focused on the basics and providing quality services to the community. We are not recommending any changes to other fees like our vehicle tax or our solid waste fees. We join many local governments across the state who are paying close attention to the North Carolina General Assembly and legislation that's been proposed that could impact our local revenue adjustments and our ability to make those adjustments in future years. So that's kind of a very high level. We'll get into the details, and to start out, I'll ask Heather to talk about the revenues.
Good afternoon. I just want to reiterate some of our numbers that we discussed at the 1st of March and where we come up with the numbers for our property tax and our sales and use tax. For the adopted budget for fiscal year 26 that we're in, our estimated valuations was $303 million. And then we were given that around April of 25. And then as our TR2 report come out, that was the true valuations was $306 million, and our estimated valuations for FY27 come in at $310 million, and some change, but it's $310 million. So that's where that's just for real property. Our total for real property, utilities, personal, and the vehicles was $404 million for fiscal year 27. And we project the collection rate at 98%, because that's basically that's how we've trended in the past 4 to 5 years is the collection rate. So we can't budget anything more than that. And for fiscal year 27, for just the property is $2.2 million, and then $206,000 for just vehicles. For sales and use tax, the state of North Carolina has estimated a 3% increase over last year. We are kind of conservative with that and just going with a 2% increase, which that will equal to our sales and use tax estimate is $1,230,000. And I think you guys have that information with your last month or our March packet. And if you need it, I'll resend it out. And just as a percentage wise for our tax revenue, that's about a 3% increase. We budgeted a 2% increase in interest and penalties, which is comes across from our property taxes. A 10% increase in vehicle property tax, and a 2%, like I said, a 2% increase in the sales and use tax. I think we've kind of stayed flat on our investment income. We're doing pretty good with about $67,000 a month on our interest income for that. But whenever we start to use it at the first of the year, it'll kind of go down. So we just kind of stayed flat with that. And I mean, everything else that our solid waste collection, we've went up about 2% just because some of the growth within the community. And that's about the biggest highlights that I have as far as revenue goes.
So just on the solid waste, so the fees, we're not changing the fee, but we anticipate additional customers that are coming online with the new housing. So that's where that factor. We have not changed our number of customers in several years. I believe it was about 14,000 or so, plus or minus. But I think we anticipated maybe another 20 or 30 additional people each month, of course, paying into that. And then on the vehicle, we have our additional vehicle tax that is $10 that we've had for several years. Five of that goes to the general fund. 5 of that goes to Power Bill Fund. We had estimated for several years about 2,600 vehicles. Our current information shows that number's I think about 2,750. So we've added 150 vehicles to the count. So we've made those kinds of adjustments in those areas. Any questions y'all might have about revenues? All right. So then on the expenditure side, of course, this is all driven by our strategic plan priorities. We have 5 areas we focus on: staff excellence, outreach and involvement, infrastructure and properties, public safety, and community planning and development. And so the recommended budget, of course, is a reaction to that, and it's our recommendation for how to work towards those goals. Of course, we have way more that we would like to do than the resources available, so it's all about prioritization and what we can do at this time with the resources available. One thing I would like to point out on the expenditure side, right off the bat, before we get into some of the more interesting things perhaps, is debt service. We have debt service organized a little differently in the budget this year. It's pulled out into, it looks like its own department in the way the budget is formatted, and that has to do with our software and accounting conversion that we've done with the league. So you'll see that separately, and those factors used to be those expenditures used to be programmed within some of the individual departmental budgets. As a whole, our annual debt service obligation for the coming year is going to be $223,661. That's relatively flat. That number has not really changed since the most recent thing that got added on was the new fire engine. And so that's going to be pretty stable for several years to come, unless there are additional things that we are financing that will increase that number. But I want to point out that the figure I mentioned of 223,000 is the equivalent of 5.6 cents of the ad valorem tax rate. And of course, that factor is based on your whole assessed values and how much 1 penny of each cent of your tax rate will generate. Our penny is up to about $39,000, so it's increased a little, but that is the number that over time, as we get continued investment in Spencer and our tax base grows, I like to call it horsepower. We get more horsepower in that penny, the more industrial development and more investment we have in our community. That penny goes further, and it takes the burden off of the residential taxpayer that is currently bearing much of the brunt of that. But just wanted to keep that in mind, that of our 63.05 cents, we have 5.6 cents of that's just for debt service. And I say that because that's kind of right off the top. That's non-negotiable. We got to pay that. And so that leaves everything else to accomplish what we would like to do. Departmental budget requests were extremely lean this year. Last year felt like a very lean year, and it was a challenging process to get that. And that approach really continued this year in the way that the departmental requests came in. Our team did a great job anticipating how this budget was going to look, and did a lot of the work really for us in presenting budgets that were largely flat. And we had a lot of creativity that went into how we kept things as flat as we did budget-wise, and we'll get into that. There are going to be a few positions that we're recommending be frozen for partial year, or continuation of some frozen positions to achieve some cost savings. We think these are all workable for the time being, and again, we'll get into that. But to start off with, of course, we can't do anything without our staff. We can't provide our services to the community without them. We can't work together without our team members each doing their part. And you, as a governing body, have demonstrated your commitment to our staff and the services they provide over many years. Our current year budget, FY26, invested significantly in staff compensation, and it funded about 60% of the market salary study that we were working on implementing, which allowed for quarterly rate increases in our current year. It was a commitment that was made a year ago, if you'll remember, but it was also a plan to implement this change really over 2 years, because we worked our way quarterly this year, getting to a point in March where we reached those new market rates. And again, that represented about 60% of the cost of doing that for a year by doing it in the incremental way we did. So that leaves the rest of the commitment to absorb in the following year's budget. So we were able to improve our minimum salaries, which were about 81% of market entry rates. We had several positions in the 70% range. The new rates have brought our minimum pay rates to 99% of the market entry rates that were identified in last year's study, 86% of the market average or midpoint kind of rates for each position. So again, we reached those new rates in March, and for the year ahead, we've now got the other 40% of that commitment. That's kind of a foundational investment that this recommended budget makes next year. So just for comparison, the developmental increase program that we do each year costs about $75,000 when we do one of those to bring our staff compensation along in their pay ranges. It's about $75,000 a year. The impact of the salary study represented more than double that amount. And so, again, a significant commitment that you as a governing body in the community made to our staff. So that's the first major thing I want to stress about this coming budget is it continues on with that commitment and sustains it going forward. So I also am recommending continuation of our developmental increase program that I just talked about. That would take effect the first full pay period in July. We are recommending the holiday bonus that we've done for several years to continue at the same rate for that we've done this current year of $500 for full-time staff and $250 for part-time. That's a one-time bonus lump sum. And then another really important area is our staff benefits. We have provided excellent benefits and health coverage and other benefits to our staff over the years. Maintaining the ability to do that is a key challenge and priority in the recommended fiscal year 27 budget. We have been on a grandfathered pre-American Health Care Act plan since 2009, but we were notified, if you'll recall, in December when we did our last renewal that would be the last time we could continue with this plan. So for the coming year, we're planning on an 18% increase in our group health premiums and so that would be for the final 7 months of the fiscal year because of the way our renewal works. So we factored that in. That's about $35,000 in terms of the increase of the town share of that cost. So again, this is an estimate based on what our broker has shared that they've seen in the market. We will not have exact figures until we get closer to our renewal time frame this fall. But we do recommend maintaining coverage as close as possible to what we currently have because it's one of our strongest tools we have available to retain and recruit our staff. We've also seen an increase in the required percentage of salary that we pay into the state local government employees retirement system. You've heard me talk about this and share information about this recently, but we have seen over recent years an increase in the employer share of that contribution when there was a time years ago where it was a kind of a matched share of 6% on the employer side and 6% on the employee side. But over time, the employer share has gone on due to system funding needs for future sustainability. We are next year going to be going up to 15%, 15.1% for general staff and 17.1% for law enforcement. And of course, again, those rates have been known for many years. We've been progressing towards that. The good news on this front is that the retirement system's boards of trustees, being both the local system and the state and teacher system, have recently approved new policies that could lead to pension benefit improvements, such as a cost of living increase or a one-time supplement. Employer contribution rates have been increasing significantly over the past 5 years to address future unfunded system liabilities. The new policy that will take effect July 1, 2027 for a new 5-year period through 2032 makes actuarial changes that allows investment gains to contribute towards retiree benefits rather than only unfunded liabilities. And while the post-2027 rates are not yet known, estimates indicate that employer contributions could begin to decrease gradually in the coming years. So that's a good trend to keep our eye on and may be able to stop this challenge we've had over the last 5 of this significant increase. Any questions about that before I move on to a few more departmental specifics for staff? All right. So I want to talk about some changes that we're going to suggest for police, fire, and public works. Over the past few years, the board has prioritized maintaining a proactive approach to community safety and policing. And several new positions over the last few years have made this approach possible. And to continue improving patrol supervision and coverage in advance of the growth that is coming our way, we are recommending a reclass of a current lieutenant position, which is vacant, and 2 officer positions to sergeant. This would ensure adequate patrol supervision on a 24/7 basis, which is currently available really only on for 12 out of the 24 hours of each day, and allow a current sergeant to return to operations and investigations rather than being within the patrol part of the department. These adjustments would be phased in over several months between July and January and counterbalanced with freezing one currently open sworn position for a second year, freezing a second position that's open until November, and freezing the final new sergeant position until January. So it's kind of a give and take on the positions that in discussions with Chief File we feel is workable and sustainable and gets us really to a place where at all times we will have a team on patrol that includes a sergeant and 1 to 2 other officers working together on a 24/7 basis. Within the fire department, we have 9 full-time operational positions, and that ensures we have a captain, an engineer, and a firefighter always on duty. And of course, that's in addition to our fire chief as currently a 10th full-time position. Those 9 positions work rotating 48-hour shifts in 3 groups of 3, and this structure inherently generates automatic monthly overtime. The schedule has previously built in required overtime coverage due to shortage of part-time availability. And so the recommendation for next year is to address those challenges by expanding our part-time deputy chief position to a full-time but 30-hour instead of 40-hour role. That's per week. So it turns into a 130-hour monthly schedule that provides 48 hours of what we call Kelly Day coverage, and that's some of that automatic overtime that gets generated, and then 82 hours of administrative time each month. And then for part-time staff, the recommended budget includes 16 hours of coverage each week that would generally function as weekend coverage. So combined with that and aligning the scheduled time off that our full-timers would take, it would optimize our part-time staffing availability. We've had a challenge of getting part-timers who are able to really fit within the kind of unknowns of the way we've previously had our part-time availability, which has been basically an unknown of when somebody would take time off. So with a combination of making consistent budgeted amount of hours per week and asking our full-time staff to have their time off occur on weekends, those 2 factors we believe will allow part-timers to have an improved amount of coverage, and in some cases it will allow us to go beyond our current minimum levels of 3 on the truck, and at times be able to have 4 on a truck. And that would occur, for example, if we have a weekend where no full-timer was taking off but a part-timer signed up to work, we'd wind up with 4 on a truck. So these enhancements, again, they improved our minimal 3-person staffing model, allow us to frequently have that 4-person coverage. And then within Public Works, we currently this year are doing a job share for our mechanic position. We have 2 people working part-time hours. And what we're recommended is the recommended budget includes shifting to a full-time, but again, really at a 30-hour level, not 40, complemented by a part-time 15-hour mechanic. So just a slight increase there in the coverage, but really a much more robust ability to have folks working, and there would not have that limitation of 20 hours a week, for both of them. It would just be the one. The availability of 2 mechanics has been beneficial to the town, but we think this will be much more effective. The additional cost of this would be offset by freezing 1 vacant Public Works group position until January of 2027. So before I go on, any questions about any of that?
I have a couple of questions. With the police department, how do those dates for the new positions fit in with the current basic training that we have people in? Is that correct?
fit in with the current what?
The people we have in basic law enforcement training.
Mm-hmm.
Don't we have a couple of people?
We don't have anyone in BLET. We do have some that are in field training phases, so they are already employed by us. The positions we're talking about are ones that are not filled, currently by anybody.
Okay, all right, and then on Public Works, freezing this vacant Public Works crew position for January, that's gonna mean that in the fall, when there's a lot of leaves and that kind of thing going on, are we gonna be short there? And how about for all the preparations that go on for holidays?
Yep.
Winterfest and everything else that happens in the holidays.
Yes.
period.
So we do not anticipate an issue. The vacancy we're expecting is due to we have a pending retirement that will be coming this month, and that is a position that is working on the solid waste side of the house. And of course, we have our automated side load truck that, as we've gone through the implementation of that, we've kept a second person riding in that truck for customer service type reasons. And so as that person is going to retire, we want to move ahead with working towards one person working on that truck as it is intended. That's going to require of course our ability to make sure people understand that we've given a lot of leeway over the years about how this program works with getting everything in your cart and having things the right way, but there'll be good collaboration between solid waste and code enforcement and ensuring that the communication is in place. But that was always the idea of how that truck would function would be with a one person crew.
No, but the problem is, you got some senior citizens that cannot roll that car out,
Yes.
and that's why the extra men's there.
Yep.
So it's gonna create a hardship on those older people.
We're going to continue our program. It just will require either the driver to stop the truck, get out and take care of it, or if we have other staff available, maybe on certain days of the week, they might join in and, but that's, I don't know. Yeah.
That's what I'm concerned about. I wanna make sure we give the right service to our senior citizens.
Yeah.
So there are certain people who just cannot get out and
Yes.
do it. Okay,
So
but that's not gonna put you in
Joel,
a
if
hardship.
could you come forward, Joel? So do you know off the top of your head how many folks we have using that service in terms of the that where we will do the backdoor collection?
We're doing approximately, it changes, just over 30 right now.
30 a week.
30 a week.
So,
Those services.
so 5 or 6 a day.
Correct.
So that, our truck is making probably 300 to 400 stops a day.
Correct.
So that's the percentage we're talking about. And it will slow them down, of course, a little bit, but we're talking 5 or 6 customers a day out of the 300 or 400. So
The majority of them are on Mondays and Thursdays.
Okay.
Tuesday and Wednesday, really, there's only like one on Tuesday and Wednesday. It's odd how it's on one end of town and the other, but that service will continue. We still have areas that we have to back the old truck into anyway, so we may just convert those to that service.
Yeah.
As far as just add it with the alleys. I'm not sure exactly how we're going to do it, but we'll figure it out. That will continue. That's not going anywhere.
Yeah, I know you will, but I just, like I said, I just wanna make sure that we don't shortcut some of our senior citizens.
Oh,
certainly.
no, it won't be. No, sir. None.
No, Mr. Francis, to piggyback off of what Alderwoman Sledge was saying in reference to freezing that job, now is that going to be a permanent freeze on that particular position or just for
No.
a temporary moment?
So
Just wanted transparency for that.
So when we say freeze, that indicates that we anticipate having the position filled as we would say we were eliminating it if it were intended to be permanent. So, and then what we have programmed into the budget is for half a year of funding. So
we would be able to hire in January.
yes.
So
Would it be possible for us to ask Chief File some questions about frozen positions, sir? Sorry. It's trying to work. My bad. Obviously you guys have already met extensively about this, but I don't know, I feel like I just need to hear it again from you about what this is gonna mean for our police department.
Gotcha. Specific questions or just overall?
I think you're asking about the what we talked about with frozen,
Yeah.
the timing
just-
of frozen positions.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you, Peter. Yes, that's what I was asking.
yeah, so I mean, we are tight right now. We know we're gonna be tight, so we're having to make some pretty good concessions. But back, I think we talked, I believe it was 2 budgets a year. We talked about the importance of having 24-hour supervision. That's the model that I want to have. And then going back probably 4 or 5 years ago, we started talking about trying to have 2 officers on minimum and never have anybody respond alone. So obviously that's what we're trying to work towards this budget year. It's particularly hard to freeze positions, but by January 1, we will be significantly in a better position than what we are currently. So that'll give us 24-hour supervision and give us at least a minimum of 2 on 24 hours a day, with other ones floating in during peak times. So it is the model we need to work towards. I wish there was enough money just to do it all July 1. But I'm willing to make the concessions. We're going to ask a little extra out of the guys for the next 6 months, and girls. Certainly they're going to have to put forth a little extra effort to get through the fall period. But then as these new sergeants start stepping in, I think that's going to be it's going to put us where we need to be, knowing the growth that's coming, to be able to handle that first wave. Because we know that call volume, historically we can look at it with the forecast what call volume will do, it's definitely going to go up. So it does kind of coincide with whenever the truck stop and some of the other projects are anticipated to start really generating additional volume for us.
Can I ask one question as well, or if you'll share with the board, how long does it take, if once you figure out who you're going to hire, how long does it take for you to say, here's your offer and here's your start date? How long
Right,
does it
yeah,
take in
it kind of
between?
depends on if it's a lateral or obviously a training person, but typically it's 2 to 3 months is what we look at for completing the total background and getting somebody in here. So kind of the way we stair-stepped it in is what me, Peter, and Heather worked on. Stair-stepping in the positions allowed us to where if officers come to us after July 1, we can go ahead and start their process, and hopefully it aligns up. We'll go ahead and start bringing them in. So the plan would be to have the process done, and then when those positions officially unfreeze, somebody will start that day. What our target is. We don't want to open them up at that point. We want to have them open before that, and that will be our target start date for the positions.
And then internally with the number of new sergeant positions, that actually is also a promotional opportunity, for our existing staff. So Chief I will be able to run a promotional process for current staff to go through and kind of be qualified on a list as those sergeant positions become.
Yeah, kind of historically the way agencies do, you'll have an assessment for your sergeant positions, and then the board that it convenes will go ahead and assess everyone at one time. We're anticipating doing that in June. So we will have the assessments complete, and they will already have the candidates picked in order of how they were evaluated and who was chosen to be the first one and the second one and so forth. So we're kind of trying to get a little bit ahead of the game so that we can be prepared as soon as this opens up.
I appreciate the extra time and information. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you. Any other questions?
No, but I want to point something out, not for you, but for everybody, right? And I think this is really, really important, is we are seeing that we are having to make sacrifices in staffing and, freezing certain positions and things like that. And I think the reality is, some of these positions wouldn't be coming on even if we didn't freeze them for a few months. But the reality is we are, as a town, having to make sacrifices in staffing and level of service with the goal of not increasing our tax rate. And that goes back to the fact that we are still waiting for some of these economic development projects to happen. And we have heard our citizens say over and over again over the past several years, we don't want the board to raise our taxes. The reality in the past several years is we've had to, just to keep up with the pace of how our expenses have grown and staffing and make sure that we have the right levels of service. But the reality is this year, in order to keep our tax rate the same and not increase taxes or fees, we are having to make sacrifices. And so for those folks out there that say, I don't want my services to go down, but I also don't want my taxes to go up. The only way that can happen is with the economic development, and we're still waiting for those things to happen. And so I just want to reiterate that this is the classic example of everything that we've been talking about and why we need the various economic development projects that we've been talking about, so that in a few years from now, we're not having to have these conversations. We're able to lower taxes and yet offer more services and make sure we have all of our departments fully staffed to the level that they need to be served. The only way that happens is if our tax base increases through economic development.
Yeah, if you look at the town of China Grove, what Macy's did for them, it's absolutely, you know, we could be in that position in a couple of years.
And there are people out there that will say that took up a bunch of land, it took land away, and yes, it did. And there were sacrifices that had to be made. But what we are talking about now is we are having to make sacrifices with our staffing and levels of service in order to make the budget work without doing what people have asked us not to, and that's increasing taxes, and we're trying not to do that. And I don't know how many different ways I can say it and it resonate with folks, but you know, it's everyone cannot have their cake and eat it too. We are working, and our staff is working very hard and making sacrifices to make these service impacts and staffing impacts as minimal as possible while still not negatively impacting our citizens. And so, Steve, like back to your point, yeah, we don't want to reduce the level of service to our senior citizens, but at the end of the day, there is a sacrifice, there's a cost to that. And you know, you've heard them say that we're not going, that program will not go away. But at the end of the day, when our health insurance premiums are increasing by 17% and our fuel costs are going up by 8 to who knows how many percent, at the end of the day, the math has to math. And when the math, sometimes that means things get cut. And it's unfortunate. And again, something in 3 to 4 years that I hope we're not having to have any of these type of discussions. But I appreciate y'all for working through and being creative, being willing to make some sacrifices, because I know it makes your jobs more difficult, right? And it makes things more risky. It makes meeting that level of service that our customers and citizens have come to expect, it makes it that much more difficult. But at the end of the day, y'all have rolled up your sleeves and you've worked hard to provide something that is workable and that our citizens, when they look at it, should be very, very appreciative that taxes are not going up, and yet with all the increases in cost that we have no control over, that we've been able to minimize the impacts to our level of service. Thanks.
I feel like we should clap. That was very well said. Thank you.
If you could summarize that into a T-shirt, I will wear it.
No new taxes this year.
All right.
Be like
You got on real again.
So that was really just focused on our personal services part of the budget, not so much on the operating expenditures, but that is how we do our jobs. That is how we provide services to our people. It's the biggest part of our budget. So certainly a lot of time is spent on getting that right. I want to provide a few highlights out of the general fund, though, operationally, what this budget is going to include. Things like continuing within the governing body budget, continuing support of our partners, ranging from the Rowan Chamber and EDC to Central Carolina Regional Council, the League, and so on. Continued support for community events, including for the North Carolina Transportation Museum fireworks event, National Night Out, Race to the River, the Holiday Caravan Parade, Winterfest, and others. And I'll note within those amounts, we did receive a small increase request from the Transportation Museum that was accommodated, and we also received a request from the Holiday Caravan Parade that was accommodated.
And those reasons are, again, Transportation Museum because of the 250th celebration of our nation's founding, the fireworks this summer, and then the Holiday Caravan for their 75th anniversary parade.
Within our administrative budget, within our contract services amount, we're including $5,000 for a personnel policy update, working with the North Carolina League of Municipalities on that. They offer a grant program that can offset some of that cost if we use a partner vendor of theirs. And so we're recommending that funding with this personnel policy that we're using and have used for about 5 years now, of course, was a huge step forward in the town of getting something that was functional. But now that 5 years is gone, we want to make sure that things are being reviewed in that and kept up to date. So that is included in there. Within our police department, a variety of equipment replacement, including within our capital budget, the replacement upfit of one new patrol vehicle. You've heard Chief File talk about vehicles over the years, and we want to get to a place where each year we're replacing 1 or 2 vehicles. For last few years, it would have been nicer if it could have been 2 or 3 vehicles, but it's been more like 1 vehicle. Actually, in the current year budget, we had no vehicles, and we were able to wind up finding some funding to be able to do the 1 vehicle we did this year. So that is included in there. Within our fire department, you've heard Chief Lanning talk about the new or the change in the records management software. What used to be available, let me make sure I'm saying this correctly. I think the software that we have no longer has the ability for running reports for some reason. And so the county's got a new countywide records management software. Our share of that is about $8,000. There's a significant amount of safety equipment included in the fire budget. And I'll note we are planning an 8% increase in fuel in the fire budget. So that is definitely a factor. Of course, that's based on what we've seen. If things continue the way they've gone with fuel in the last months for an ongoing basis, we're going to have to revisit that factor. But that is what we've factored in there. For fuel in the public works side, we're planning on a 5% increase cost for fuel. Public works buys fuel from a vendor at a bulk basis, and we have our own fueling capabilities for our public works equipment. And so in their budget, it's been able to the current costs have been kind of avoided because we were able to have our own stockpile at a previous cost. But at some point, we're going to have to fill our tanks back up, and that's where we're seeing the need for some additional fuel on the public works side.
Are our other departments able to take advantage of that bulk fuel purchase?
I think, well, it would lead to us needing to buy it more frequently. So it would. So we're not getting.
But it would seem to me, right? And I mean, I know part of this is cost of diesel has gone up much more than cost of gas and stuff. But if our fuel for fire is having to go up 8%, but yet fuel for public works is 5% because we get a bulk discount, why are we not why are we not servicing those other? I mean, like Concord, for instance, has a fleet services.
Yes.
Where they service all of their fleet vehicles.
So it's not that we are not getting wholesale bulk pricing, but we are able to buy it in bulk.
Right.
At basically the same retail pricing you're seeing out there, but it's that we've got it. And then it lasts. Joel typically has to refill the diesel, I think, 4 times a year. Is that correct? But so the savings is coming from when you have fuel, when you bought it at $2, and when it goes up to $4, you've already bought it. And you don't need to.
Trash trucks is the main use of our on-road diesel fuel. That's what they use. Yeah. So it's usually 6 times a year to fill that up. I only can have the capacity of 1,000 gallons. 2 fillings up of a fire truck. and then we're buying more fuel. You see what I'm saying? So we're
Yeah,
not really
yeah.
offsetting any, that's the difference between the call volumes is what we use and what they use,
Yeah.
and the amount their trucks take.
And that brings me back to my next point.
See?
With all our medical calls of, it's not just the wear and tear on the fire truck when they're having to do that. It's also the inefficiency of the fuel usage,
Right.
having to take that truck to all those medical calls.
Sure.
So something to think about down the road.
The Public Works budget also is noting additional expense for landfill tipping fees. Some of that driven by growth, of course. Some of that's offset by our additional solid waste fee collection revenue. But we also have a mower replacement that's programmed in on the capital side. That was a request from last fiscal year that was deferred, and now it's time. And if we, the good news about mower replacements, and we have experienced this a couple years back with a different mower. It's same as when we have vehicles that we can auction off. We are able to program on the revenue side some amount, that offsets that. Active living and public library, we are planning on increased utility expenses, specifically for the power and water needs associated with our new town park. But I'll note, just across all our departments, utility-wise, we have basically an average of 11% higher on utility costs, and the two factors that are leading to that is what we're anticipating based on what we've heard from Duke Energy starting in January, but also the city of Salisbury for the last several years on the water side. They're planning on basically a 4% rate increase for the foreseeable future. So this accommodates those. Rowan Park shelter replacement. That is a need. You heard Joel talk about this at the last meeting of having a contractor being able to remove the one that's currently in an unsafe condition. And so we program funds in to replace that with something else next year. And then it also includes maintenance and signage needs at the library. This is something we've been trying to accomplish for several years. We had the big air conditioning issue at the library this year that led to us holding off on what we had planned to do with signage. But we definitely want to make that improvement there.
What kind of signage do you talking about?
Exterior signage that notes that it's the Spencer Library. That we've heard from the community over the years that there's no sign that says it's Spencer Public Library, and so that's something that we've for a few years been trying to accommodate. That could range in costs. We think a lower cost method of doing that is adding some lettering to the building. We also have a freestanding sign on Rowan Avenue that has a walking map if you're standing on the sidewalk. But if you're on the street, there's a blank on it. And that's so that we can use that side, the blank side of that sign, to add some signage for the library. But that's what that's talking about.
Well, go ahead.
Bring my magic marker.
So in general, I also want to note out that our budget is balanced with the use of some fund balance. It is more than what we planned for in the current year. Total of about $455,000. 67 of that is covering the capital requests. And just as a note, we estimate that of the amount we programmed in the budget this year, which was a little over $300,000, we're going to wind up using 15 to 20% of that amount rather than all of that amount, just based on financial performance throughout the year. So we expect that sort of trend to continue, but this is an important budgetary tool that allows us to fill in this gap we have now between the demands we have on the expenditure side and the revenues that we see coming in the future. On the, for the Powell Bill Fund, again, the amount is about $228,000. It's taking our expected local revenue and state revenue and combining that with about $74,000 out of the Powell Bills fund balance. It has its own fund balance that's currently sitting at about $300,000. And the last time we've done a traditional resurfacing project here in Spencer was the summer of 2023. It typically would take us several years of saving up to be able to do a sizable enough resurfacing. And we've talked about the need to do some other types of street maintenance instead. And so what we're planning to do in the coming month or so is bid out a resurfacing maintenance type project for a lot of patches and other types of maintenance. And Joel's got a list, and that is going to be much longer than the funds available, of course. But we're gonna bid that out and get started on it with current year funds that we have about $75,000 or $80,000 remaining in current year Powell Bill to get started with that, and we hope to then use funding for next year's budget to continue that program. So rather than planning on a traditional take 4 or 5 blocks and resurface them all, this is going to let us hit the most important areas and do more, spread that around in more areas. So that's the strategy we're going to plan on for next year.
Have we evaluated which ones are the worst as far as that goes and figured out what? I know we had a valuation of streets in the past, what needs to be done, but how about patching holes? I mean, have we evaluated all the streets in Spencer and we're going to work on the worst ones or what?
That is correct.
Okay.
Mostly what we're finding right now is there's a lot of intersections. That's a lot of the areas that we're finding. First blocks of streets where it's going off the new pavement off Salisbury Avenue is a lot of the areas that they didn't pave the aprons. So it's deteriorating. First Street, Second Street, 6th Street, Harrison, Henderson. I could keep going, I'm sorry. But there's a lot of areas that are just rutted out. And if we don't do something with them,
They're going to get what?
They're going to go to nothing, and then you're going to have to rebuild the road.
But there's going to be some attention to some of these patches that never met compaction as far as that goes on streets or that?
Some of them, yes. Now, I can't do 5th Street. You know what I mean? I don't have enough to completely redo 5th Street, but we can, we can do the patching, you know what I mean? But we're not, the only way to completely fix that is to mill it down and start over. Really, I mean, you're not going to fix that patch and it's going to do any better.
I don't like that, but there's so many streets that.
Oh, yeah, there's streets.
No.
And no offense,
someone
most
Charles.
people don't understand patching off Main Street, how bad it's gonna get. They're more concerned about these potholes that are in middle of streets.
And we're going to continue with the potholes. I mean, that's what we
But they need
normally
more
do. But
attention.
it needs a lot.
What
It does, but there will be individual patching. But the areas we're looking at first will be more of your intersections, larger patches. There's one on Rowan Avenue that's really bad. One on Yadkin, some on Yadkin behind the Old Town Hall, that area.
Right.
So it'll be spread out throughout town where you're not going to see a complete block paving.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's going to be focused on the bigger stuff that
Right.
our crews internally can't do because we do a number of
Right. It's going to take
patches.
It's going to take milling, digging them up, and patching large areas with a paver. It's not going to be just a fill a little bit, roll it with a
But the
roller.
general patching will continue.
No, the general patching will continue, and we'll continue doing some of those type areas, cutting them out, fixing them, that kind of stuff. But the larger that's going to take pavers and milling and that kind of stuff will be contracted out.
And again, this is what we talked about last year, right? Hearing from the residents that, and recognizing that our annual Powell bill allocation does not go nearly as far as it did a decade ago.
No.
And so we can't do these massive resurfacing projects like we used to. And so we're having to go to a more reactive mode until the point that we can generate more revenue through economic development. Again, that's what solves this issue.
Well, and that's precisely it. There are a lot of communities that they are able to say, we're going to take 1 or 2 cents of our tax rate and dedicate it into road, the transportation or transit or some of these things that the general fund is investing into what we're trying to manage.
And one day we will be able to do that, but right now, $39,000, which is 1 cent of our tax levy, isn't going to go a long way towards
Not at all.
resurfacing.
That didn't even take care of the increase in the diesel fuel.
Right.
All right.
So-
Which is what drives the price of pavers. You need the slurry, which comes from diesel fuel. It's driving it every day.
Wow. So with that being said, is there a percentage? I know you said on some of the larger scale we'll have to probably contract out as far as the patching. Now, is DOT responsible for any of the locations?
Now, you will see a lot of paving in town this year because DOT are planning I'm pretty sure that they're going to pave Jefferson, Whitehead, Oakwood, and Charles.
That's right.
Okay.
So all of those are going to be paved by the state this
Okay,
year.
great.
Which we need to continue to publicize
I want-
that's on the list, because I know we've seen a lot of folks saying
I've had a lot of
Charles
questions.
Street, and I mean, everything you just mentioned are the
Right.
folks where people are complaining the
Right,
most.
right, and that's a lot of
Yeah.
the complaints. Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
yeah. I just wanted to say thanks so much for the clarity on that, because like you stated, Jonathan, for the record, Mr. Mayor, the residents are very much concerned about that, and then to know that that's not coming from our budget, some of that work coming from the state would be great, and hopefully they can take on more
Right.
to help us
Correct.
out.
Correct. And they're doing, it's just like Salisbury Avenue, that was done by the state. That was not out of our Powell bill funding. That was done by the state. Other than that area of what they're talking, there's very few roads, 3rd and 7th Street downtown. That's the only two that are state.
Right.
3rd was done not too long ago. 7th was too. So they're going to be a little further down on the list. But that pretty much takes down the downtown corridor as far as state roads. That'll take care of a lot of it.
And now, is that with sidewalks as well?
No.
Okay.
No, that will not have anything to do with sidewalks. That is a completely different project
Okay.
that we're working on trying to get the sidewalks in. This will be just for road paving.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
But I know this is kind of late as far as but the state paid the main street out here, and you're saying the intersections that intersect it are falling apart. Wouldn't that be their responsibility?
No, it's the aprons of our streets that are falling apart, not the road.
So they did the aprons where the intersection is with a state road. So on 3rd Street, 7th Street, some of those you've seen where they went beyond, but where it's like here at 4th, 5th Street and others,
4th or something like that. How far an apron do they provide? I'm just curious.
To their right of way.
they call it pull through. So if you go out here to Salisbury Avenue, even the crosswalk was not included.
That's correct.
It's just that lane, that the edge of the curb is it.
Curb to curb.
Okay, I'm just curious.
Yeah, but that's the
for
reasoning.
information.
Yeah, that's the reasoning.
Yeah, that's
And
fine.
they were in bad shape, and we were kind of hoping that would be included in some of that, but no.
Yeah.
Some of them did get included. Now, whether it was on purpose or whether it wasn't on purpose, I don't know. But some of them did get included.
Should have been out there with them.
Yeah, we'll see. But we'll take our hits where we can take them.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right. So we've talked about the capital reserve and replacement fund, and again, the primary expenses in there are the replacement vehicle and upfit and police and the public works mower, and we accomplished that as of now with a year-to-year funding really through the general fund. The capital requests this year were minimal, just like the operational requests, but they were critical things that we do need to move forward with. We established this fund several years back, and we anticipate in the future, as funding becomes available, we'll be able to do two things. One is with you probably, if you've read an article recently about the county budget, you've heard about their kind of revenue surpluses and these sorts of things, and extra what they get to do with their extra money. So maybe someday we'll, with more economic development, that's where we'll see ourselves in a similar position where we can more proactively fund things in the capital reserve. And also program within departmental budgets each year contributions in the capital reserve, for replacements and that sort of thing. But for now, it's more of a year-to-year calculation.
If there are monies left in the different departmental budgets at the end of the fiscal year,
Yes.
does that roll over, or can that go to the capital reserve, or, I mean, you know, you find, I don't know how you do it, but you find
Right.
money to pay for things when we have to have them.
That's
like
right.
Air conditioner. So, I mean, if there's money left, does it go away? Is it use it or lose it, or?
So what happens is, say our budget this year was $1 million, and tax revenue came in at $1.5 million. Well, then we would have $500,000 extra.
Mm-hmm.
If our budget were that simple, we would
Right.
say, oh, we have $500,000 and we're going to put it into fund balance, and that grows our savings account. The way our budget has been structured the last few years, we've had to plan on use of fund balance, and so to be able to achieve that outcome, the revenues has to either exceed expectations by that much, or the expenditures have to be that much below. So it depends on your revenues and expenditures throughout the year and what happens at year end. What rolls over into the following budget are if we have open purchase orders and contracts and those sorts of things. That's why usually what you see in the budget is different than what you adopted, because the part of the budget ordinance already accounts for rolling in some current year funding that is still in the process of being expended, and those numbers start to change. So does that answer your question? Okay. All right, I'm wrapping this up now. I'm gonna have to start eating mints, I think, if I don't. Our proposed fiscal year 2027 budget maintains a very lean operational stance, but continues to invest in high quality services expected by the community and delivered by our most important resource, and that's our staff. We expect continued development in Spencer, and that will add value to our tax base going forward, and this will ultimately lead to not just better services, but relief for our residential taxpayers. We are feeling growing pains, and we have for several years, but this is a time where we're working to serve today's community and preparing for the future. And Alderwoman Sledge talked about this actually not too long ago, but I wanted to mention it too. We have a peer town in our county, and they had a budget very similar to ours just 3 years ago. But in that time, economic development has multiplied their tax base. Their operating budget is now in the order of $10 million instead of $5 million. Their recommended budget appears to have allowed all the types of expansion to service delivery, staff, and community amenities and programming we wish for, while needing no use of cash to balance the ledger. This reality is just ahead for us. It's critical that we maintain our momentum while making the absolute best of our resources. There was essentially zero fat left to trim in this budget. And it's because of how lean our departments already operate and how hard they work to be good financial stewards. An enormous thank you for what you've heard today goes to our finance officer, Heather Can, and our entire staff, our staff leadership team, and even staff within the departments for their collaboration on this recommendation. So we will have a copy of the recommended budget available here for public use, and by tomorrow we'll have the entire document available on our website. Public hearing on the budget is scheduled for 5:30 p.m. on Thursday, June 4th, which is our June pre-agenda meeting here at Town Hall. And we will be prepared for budget adoption at the June 9th meeting, or that can serve as a workshop opportunity for adoption later in June. This is our recommendation, but it's now your turn to consider and change as you see fit. Hopefully not too much, because we feel like we've worked really hard on it, but at the end of the day, it's your budget to consider and adopt prior to July 1st. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Appreciate all the time that's gone into it. So board, obviously, this is a time if there are any final questions or anything like that, or any final direction that you want to give to staff and management as they finalize this, but we will consider this in June. And of course, if there's anything between now and then that we need to make known, we can. I will kind of close this up by saying, echoing Peter's words, thank you, especially to Peter and Heather and the department heads. I think the thing that I've seen through this process this year is there is a level of trust that has been developed between our board and our staff and management that you know that this board goes to bat for our staff, that we will support you, and that there's a level of trust that when you bring things to us that you need, we truly know that you need it. And so we recognize that you're going to tell us what you need, what you have to have, and that you're going to tell us what you like to have. And then usually we try to make those things happen, but when we can't make them all happen, that we know that y'all are working to make sure that you're balancing out those have to haves with the would like to haves. And that the fact that you're willing to make those sacrifices and still do the jobs that y'all do at a top level of quality and customer service for our citizens. Again, I tell folks throughout this county and frankly throughout North Carolina, I'd put our staff up against anybody else because I'm proud to have you all working for us and with us. And I'm proud to get to serve alongside of you. So thank you all very, very much for all the work. These are not fun budgets to have to work through, right? We hope very soon we're going to have some fun budgets for you to work through, all these things and projects and things that you've wanted to get done, that we'll be able to do that. And our commitment is that we're going to be alongside you through that process to make sure that we help make those things happen. So thank you all for bearing with the process this year. Board, any other final comments on the budget or questions?
I appreciate all the hard work that's gone into it, and I think it's a good, solid budget. I think we're in a different situation than we were last year at this time. You know, and not having to raise taxes, I think is wonderful, and the future is going to be brighter.
But I think the message to reiterate to the public is
Economic.
Keeping our tax rate the same does come at a cost.
Yep.
And we need to make sure that that is very clear to them.
Yeah.
The money we've had for the ARPA budget was just icing on the cake.
Mm-hmm.
And now
that allowed us to do a lot of things that we would not have done, and frankly
exactly.
positioned us for some of the development that we're about to see.
Right.
And so we were very fortunate by that. But I think we all knew that once that ended, there were going to be some decisions that had to make. Yeah, we were going to, and I will commend our staff and especially the manager for balancing that, right? That we were able to, I would say it's been a relatively smooth transition from those additional ARPA funds to where we are now, because our budget has grown, our town has grown, and the potential has grown. So, thank you. Anything else, board? If not, there is a need to go into executive session this evening, and we'll entertain a motion to do so in accordance with North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11, Section A4. We'll entertain a motion specifically for the purpose of economic development discussion.
I move to go into executive session.
Second.
There's a motion by Ms. Sledge, a second by Mr. Muhammad. Again, we'll vote to enter executive session specifically to discuss matters relating to the location or expansion of industries or other businesses in the area served by the public body, including agreement on a tentative list of economic development incentives that may be offered by the public body in negotiations, or to discuss matters relating to the military installation, closure, or realignment. Any action approving the signing of an economic development contract or commitment, or the action authorizing the payment of economic development expenditures shall be taken in an open session. So that is specifically the statute by which we would enter for the purposes of discussing economic development possibilities, but any action must be taken in open session. So there's a motion and a second. All in favor of going into executive session? All right, all opposed? All right, we are in executive session. We will take a brief 5-minute break and then reconvene.